The seventh President of the United States of America, Andrew Jackson, 1829 to 1837. Part 4. The crisis was eventually diffused through a combination of Jackson's assertive stance and a compromise tariff. However, the episode underscored the simmering tensions between states' rights and federal authority, foreshadowing conflicts that would erupt in the coming decades. While the aforementioned policies were among the most significant, Jackson's presidency was marked by a series of other notable actions. He vehemently opposed the recharter of the Second Bank of the United States, viewing it as a bastion of elite privilege. This opposition culminated in his veto of the bank's recharter and the subsequent removal of federal deposits from the institution. Additionally, Jackson faced and defied censure by the Senate, further emphasizing his contentious relationship with certain sectors of the government. In summary, Jackson's major policies and actions were both transformative and divisive. While some of his decisions, like the spoils system, sought to democratize political participation, others, like the Indian Removal Act, are remembered with deep regret. His assertive approach to the presidency expanded the power of the executive branch and laid the groundwork for future presidents. The full impact and legacy of these actions, both positive and negative, are still debated by historians and scholars to this day. Among the most defining aspects of Andrew Jackson's presidency was his vehement opposition to the Second Bank of the United States. This conflict not only highlighted Jackson's deep-seated distrust of financial institutions and elite power structures but also set the stage for a significant realignment in American economic policy. Chartered in 1816 for a 20-year period, the Second Bank of the United States was intended to stabilize the country's finances following the War of 1812. As the nation's central bank, it held federal funds, regulated currency, and provided a check on state banks. However, it also became a point of contention due to its significant influence over the nation's economy and its perceived favoritism toward the Eastern business elite. Jackson's opposition to the bank was rooted in a mix of personal mistrust and political ideology. Having faced financial losses in his personal dealings with banks, Jackson was wary of them. But more than that, he viewed the bank, with its immense economic power and limited accountability, as a threat to American democracy. He believed it disproportionately favored the wealthy and impinged on the rights of the states. This opposition reached its climax in 1832, when the issue of the bank's recharter was pushed by its supporters, led by Senator Henry Clay, 4 years before its expiration. They hoped that making the bank an issue in the 1832 presidential election would challenge Jackson. However, this move backfired. Jackson vetoed the recharter bill in a powerful message that framed the bank as an institution that benefited the privileged few at the expense of the many. His stance resonated with many Americans, bolstering his image as the defender of the common man. Jackson's decision to not only veto the recharter but also to withdraw federal deposits from the bank had significant economic implications. He ordered the removal of government funds, redistributing them to various state banks, colloquially known as pet banks. This decentralization led to an increase in state bank lending and a surge in land speculation. While initially stimulating economic growth, these policies eventually contributed to the financial panic of 1837 and a subsequent economic depression. Critics blamed Jackson's bank policies, particularly the Specie Circular, which mandated government lands be purchased with gold or silver, for exacerbating the crisis. Second Bank of the United States marked the end of the nation's experiment with a centralized banking system until the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. The ensuing years saw a proliferation of state banks and periodic financial panics. Jackson's bank war solidified the Democratic Party's stance against a centralized banking system, a position it held for decades. In conclusion, the national bank controversy under Jackson was not just a financial or economic dispute. It was a clash of ideologies, pitting different visions of American democracy against each other. Jackson's actions and the fallout from the bank's dissolution underscore the profound impact a president can have on the nation's economic trajectory and institutional landscape. While Andrew Jackson's presidency was marked by significant achievements, it was also rife with controversies and challenges that tested both his leadership and the nation's democratic ideals. These episodes highlight the complexities of Jackson's character and the tumultuous era in which he governed. A more personal controversy that ensnared Jackson's administration was the Petticoat Affair, centered on the social ostracization of Margaret Peggy Eaton, the wife of Secretary of War John Eaton. Peggy faced rumors and scandal about her past, and Washington society, led by Vice President John C. Calhoun's wife, Floride, shunned her. Jackson, reminded of the smears against his own late wife, Rachel, staunchly defended the Eatons. The situation escalated, fracturing the cabinet and intensifying the rift between Jackson and Calhoun. The fallout led to the resignation of several cabinet members and further solidified Jackson's reliance on an informal group of advisors known as the Kitchen Cabinet. In January 1835, Jackson faced a direct threat to his life when Richard Lawrence, a mentally ill man, attempted to assassinate him. Both of Lawrence's pistols misfired, and Jackson was unharmed. In the ensuing trial, Lawrence was found not guilty by reason of insanity. This event marked the first assassination attempt on a sitting U.S. president and underscored the volatile political climate of the era. Another major challenge to Jackson's authority came from the Senate. In 1834, as a rebuke for his actions related to the National Bank, the Senate passed a resolution of censure against Jackson. This marked the first time a U.S. president was officially reprimanded by the Senate. Jackson was livid and responded with a formal protest. It wasn't until 1837, after the Democrats gained control of the Senate, that the censure was expunged from the record. Jackson's ownership of slaves and his stance on the burgeoning abolitionist movement also drew significant controversy. He benefited personally from the institution of slavery and believed in the rights of states to determine their own policies on the issue. Concerned about maintaining the Union, he viewed abolitionist sentiments as a threat to national unity. Jackson's administration took a hard line against anti-slavery materials, leading to the suppression of abolitionist mailings in the South, which raised concerns about the restriction of free speech. In summary, the controversies and challenges faced during Jackson's presidency reveal a leader unafraid of confrontation, deeply loyal to those he trusted, and committed to his vision of American democracy, even amidst substantial opposition. These events also reflect the broader tensions and ideological battles of the Jacksonian era, laying the groundwork for future struggles in the nation's history. Andrew Jackson's presidency remains one of the most studied and debated periods in American history. His leadership style, policies, and decisions have left an indelible mark on the nation, with ramifications that reverberate to this day. Evaluating his legacy requires understanding both the profound changes he initiated and the enduring controversies that accompanied his tenure. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Jackson's legacy is his image as the champion of the common man. He reshaped the presidency, positioning himself as the direct representative of the American populace. Under his leadership, the era witnessed an expansion of political participation, as voting rights for white men grew and the elitist barriers of the past began to crumble. His use of the spoils system, though criticized, was a manifestation of his belief in broader democratic participation in government. Jackson's presidency marked a significant shift in the balance of power between the branches of government. He expanded the role of the executive branch, asserting presidential authority in ways previously unseen. His use of the veto power, not just on constitutional grounds but also on policy differences, set a precedent for future presidents. This expansion of executive power is a double-edged sword in his legacy. While it allowed for decisive action in some instances, it also raised concerns about autocratic tendencies. One of the darkest aspects of Jackson's legacy is the forced removal of Native Americans from their ancestral lands. The Indian Removal Act and the subsequent Trail of Tears are seen by many as a stain on American history, representing a grave injustice perpetrated against indigenous peoples. This policy has significantly marred Jackson's historical reputation, overshadowing other aspects of his presidency for many scholars and citizens. Second Bank of the United States and his economic policies set the nation on a new financial trajectory. While his distrust of the National Bank resonated with many Americans, the subsequent economic instability, culminating in the Panic of 1837, serves as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of presidential decisions. Foundations of the modern Democratic Party. Politically, Jackson's influence is felt in the foundations of the modern Democratic Party. His leadership style, policy preferences, and populist appeal helped shape the party's identity, setting it on a path distinct from its rivals. In conclusion, Andrew Jackson's legacy is multifaceted and complex. He was a transformative figure, a president who left an indelible imprint on the office and the nation. While he is celebrated for his populist ethos and his championing of the common man, he is also criticized for his policies towards Native Americans and his expansion of executive power. Like all historical figures, Jackson's legacy is a blend of achievements and shortcomings, and his impact on the United States remains a subject of intense study and debate. The presidency of Andrew Jackson stands as one of the most dynamic and influential periods in American history. From his rise as a war hero to his tenure as the 7th President of the United States, Jackson's leadership was marked by a potent mix of populist fervor, assertive decision-making, and an unwavering commitment to his vision of the Republic. His championing of the common man expanded the boundaries of American democracy, even as his policies and decisions sparked controversy and debate. The shifts in economic policy, the contentious battle with the Second Bank, and the tragic forced removal of Native Americans reflect a presidency that was both transformative and, at times, divisive. Jackson's legacy is further punctuated by the expansion of executive power and the foundational elements he laid for the Democratic Party. As historians and scholars continue to analyze and debate his impact, one thing remains clear: Jackson's presidency permanently altered the trajectory of the nation. His leadership style, policy decisions, and the challenges he faced have left a lasting imprint, serving as both lessons and cautionary tales for future generations. In understanding Jackson, we gain deeper insight into the evolving nature of American democracy and the complex interplay of leadership, policy, and public sentiment. Ultimately, the story of Andrew Jackson reminds us of the multifaceted nature of historical legacies, where achievements and shortcomings coexist, shaping the course of a nation's journey. While he is celebrated for his populist ethos and his championing of the common man, he is also criticized for his policies towards Native Americans and his expansion of executive power. Like all historical figures, Jackson's legacy is a blend of achievements and shortcomings, and his impact on the United States remains a subject of intense study and debate. The presidency of Andrew Jackson stands as one of the most dynamic and influential periods in American history. From his rise as a war hero to his tenure as the 7th President of the United States, Jackson's leadership was marked by a potent mix of populist fervor, assertive decision-making, and an unwavering commitment to his vision of the Republic. His championing of the common man expanded the boundaries of American democracy, even as his policies and decisions sparked controversy and debate. The shifts in economic policy, the contentious battle with the Second Bank, and the tragic forced removal of Native Americans reflect a presidency that was both transformative and, at times, divisive. Jackson's legacy is further punctuated by the expansion of executive power and the foundational elements he laid for the Democratic Party. As historians and scholars continue to analyze and debate his impact, one thing remains clear: Jackson's presidency permanently altered the trajectory of the nation. His leadership style, policy decisions, and the challenges he faced have left a lasting imprint, serving as both lessons and cautionary tales for future generations. In understanding Jackson, we gain deeper insight into the evolving nature of American democracy and the complex interplay of leadership, policy, and public sentiment. Ultimately, the story of Andrew Jackson reminds us of the multifaceted nature of historical legacies, where achievements and shortcomings coexist, shaping the course of a nation's journey. America during the age of Jackson was a nation brimming with possibility and growing into a golden, young adulthood. Though born far from the wealth of the Northern elite, Jackson was able to expand the powers of the president beyond any before him. The result was indelible changes in the government. Though Jackson also fought hard to restore a nation of we the people and give voice to all those he represented as president, this expansion of democracy did not include everyone. Slavery remained a pervasive part of American society, as did the continuing displacement of Native Americans. Opportunities for women and free blacks were still largely non-existent under Jackson's presidency. Nevertheless, Jackson helped to inspire a uniquely American sense of promise and hope, the idea that anyone can succeed through hard work and natural ability, rather than through unearned power and privilege. President Andrew Jackson firmly established that presidents could be more than just mere executives enforcing laws. He set the precedent of the president as the sole representative of the people and, as such, could wield power broadly to carry out their will. Jackson laid the framework for democracy, paid off the national debt, gained new lands for America, strengthened relationships with foreign nations globally, and issued a new currency. Jackson was different. No one like him had ever served as president. He made executive decisions based on his personal beliefs and did what he could to protect the common man. Besides the tremendous work he achieved in office and in the military, President Jackson left a legacy resulting from his unorthodox, action-first mentality that pushed the boundaries for what both the president and the nation could achieve. Even today, Andrew Jackson is still awash in a storm of controversy. His life is full of contradiction, much like the country he helped build. One of his earliest biographers called him a democratic autocrat and an atrocious saint. Without fail, every generation of historians has reshaped and revised our understanding of Jackson and will no doubt continue to do so. The reason is simple. Andrew Jackson and his age are inextricably woven into the fabric of America. At times remarkable and others disastrous, Andrew Jackson just went for it. Old Hickory's aggressive spirit led to immense change for America as land was gained, debts were repaid, foreign relationships were strengthened, and democracy began. Jackson truly acted for the people. The Revolutionary War win of America over Great Britain in 1783 resulted in a struggling economy and a large debt. The new country's government created the first Bank of the United States to address these issues from the federal level. Some 30 years later, Jackson led the U.S. to victory at the Battle of New Orleans, ending the War of 1812. Now that the nation had defended its existence with military force, it had to develop stronger financial systems to ensure the nation's long-term success. After several years of debate and formulation, the United States Congress authorized the Second Bank of the United States Bus as a public-private enterprise in 1816 for a period of 20 years. The institution's capital, reach, and responsibilities were more expansive than those of the First Bank. Key duties were to hold the country's money, revenue generation as through loans, and to pay off the national debt. The bank profits benefited private stockholders as well as the U.S. government. The strategy of providing extensive credit, then quickly recalling it, raised funds to resolve the financial upheaval and led to the Panic of 1819, which resulted in a recession. New leadership attempted to improve conditions in different ways, but eventually, the changes saw little success to remedy challenges, leading to a depression. This resulted in questioning the bank's role and some economic hardships occurring in the U.S. under the direction of its new president Nicholas Biddle in 1823. Lending practices increased in a more balanced and stabilized way, as well as requiring hard currency backing, produced an improved financial climate. In a lengthy battle over a national banking system, President Andrew Jackson reshaped the American economy to run without a central bank until the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. He strengthened the executive branch's role in ways that reverberate today, demonstrating the president can take a strong role in national affairs. Andrew Jackson established himself as a broadly appealing figure during the election of 1824. The one candidate to appeal beyond his regional base, the rough-hewn Tennessean, had never held a cabinet post or even been abroad, but his heroics as a general captured the public imagination. Despite winning the most electoral votes, however, Jackson did not secure a majority, and the House of Representatives elected John Quincy Adams president, which Jackson derided as a corrupt bargain. 4 years later, Jackson's popularity led to a relatively comfortable victory, and in his first words as the new president, Jackson spoke of limited executive authority, respect for state power, and American Indian rights. Once in office, however, Jackson transformed the president's role from chief administrator to popular tribune, reversing a tradition of executive deference to legislative supremacy and expanding the power of the executive. The Indian Removal Act was the only major piece of legislation passed at Jackson's behest during his 8 years as president, with the forced and deadly exodus of American Indians from their native lands in the South to areas west of the Mississippi remembered as the infamous Trail of Tears. In administering the laws of Congress, I shall keep steadily in view the limitations as well as the extent of the executive power, trusting thereby to discharge the functions of my office without transcending its authority. Jackson was born in the then remote Waxhaws region of the Carolinas on March 15, 1767. His parents were Scots-Irish immigrants, and his father died just 3 weeks shy of Jackson's birth. One of 3 children, all boys, Jackson grew up in near poverty and received very little schooling as a child. His older brother Hugh died of heat stroke during the Battle of Stono Ferry, a battle against the British, near Charleston, South Carolina, during the American Revolution in 1779. Andrew, then 13 years old, joined the local militia as a patriot courier. At 15 years of age, Jackson and his other brother, Robert, were captured by the British in 1781. Jackson's face was slashed by a British officer's sword when he refused to polish his boots while imprisoned, leaving lasting scars. While in confinement, the 2 brothers contracted smallpox, from which Robert would die just a few days after being released. Soon after the death of his brother, Jackson's mother died of cholera and Jackson was orphaned at the age of 14. The deaths of his family members led to his lifelong distrust of Britain. In 1791, Jackson married Rachel Donelson Robards (1767 to 1828). He was her second husband. She divorced her first husband, Lewis Robards. In 1802, Jackson was appointed as Major General of the Tennessee Militia, and would later lead troops in the War of 1812. Jackson led his troops to victory in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in March of 1814, which decimated the Red Sticks, a faction of the Creek Indians, and led to the U.S. obtaining 20 million acres of land in what is now Georgia and Alabama. Jackson would then be promoted to Major General. Although the War of 1812 had officially ended, the British later attempted to separate the Louisiana Territory from the rest of the U.S. Mad Dog Jackson, as he was known during his military career, led his soldiers to victory against the British in the Battle of New Orleans in January of 1815, despite his 5,000 soldiers being outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. Jackson was nominated for presidency in 1824, but lost to John Quincy Adams when the election came down to the vote of Speaker of the House, Henry Clay. Clay's decision to support John Quincy Adams became known as the corrupt bargain once it was found out that Adams named Clay as his Secretary of State. Reactions to the corrupt bargain led the House to nominate Jackson for presidency in 1825, 3 years before the 1828 election. During the election, Jackson was nicknamed Jackass by his opponents. He liked the name so much that he used a symbol of a donkey in his campaign for a short time. While his use of the symbol died down, the donkey would later become a symbol of the new Democratic Party. Supporters of Adams accused Jackson of being a tyrant who would use his position to achieve Napoleonic-like ambitions. Jackson called Adams an elitist who wanted to increase government in order to benefit the so-called aristocracy, Americans of enormous wealth. In the fall of 1828, Jackson won the vote, revealing that the American public preferred him because he stood for the common man, an image he validated when he gave the vote to all white male citizens rather than only to white landowners. The 1828 election was seen as a rematch between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. The latter won, in part, because of the corrupt bargain election of 1824. In Congress, Whigs, as Jackson's opponents became known, proved to be major opponents. Due to their strength, Jackson exercised his veto power more than all his predecessors combined, and he was the first president to use the pocket veto. In total, Jackson vetoed 12 bills. In 1836, a budget surplus of approximately $20 million genuinely perplexed Jackson. Jackson signed a surplus bill which distributed the money among the states. In an election year, Jackson understood the political clout this could give his hand-picked successor, Martin Van Buren. Jackson replaced about 10% of offices which he held power over, which was a high percentage in comparison to previous presidents. Jackson set up a principle of rotation by removing those whom he saw as corrupt or generally inept. One of Jackson's goals was to stabilize government finances. His spending controls combined with an increased revenue allowed him to pay off the national debt by 1835. This would be the only time in U.S. history that the federal government was debt-free. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 facilitated the forced displacement of Native Americans from their tribal lands. In what is today known as the Trail of Tears, members of the Cherokee Nation were rounded up and transplanted westward by military force in 1838 under Jackson's successor Martin Van Buren, concluding a long political battle between Jackson, Henry Clay, and Alexander Hamilton over how to build the country's economic strength. The Compromise of 1833 brought an end to tariff agitation until the 1840s. Jackson issued the Specie Circular in July 1836, requiring payment in gold or silver for public lands. However, banks could not meet the demand and began to fail, leading to the Panic of 1837. This had devastating effects on the economy throughout the course of his successor Martin Van Buren's presidency. Andrew Jackson is of the most portrayed chief executives in the history of presidential portraiture, reflecting his stature as a military hero and an authoritative leader. Caricaturists satirized every facet of Jackson's political agenda, including his promise to cleanse the government of corruption, his fight to kill the National Bank, his Indian Removal Bill, his kitchen cabinet of advisors, and the grooming of his successor, Martin Van Buren. 5 years before his death, Jackson continued to inspire commentary. An 1840 article on the occasion of the Silver Jubilee of the Battle of New Orleans opined, "What a wonderful man is Andrew Jackson. The Iron Man of his age, the incarnation of American courage." Jackson's iron will was the way that people of the period saw what we know today was the genocide and removal of Native Americans. I stop at this point today. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the world's incredible stories. Soon we will publish the 8th President of the United States, Martin Van Buren, 1837 to 1841. Martin Van Buren, a key organizer of the Democratic Party, faced economic hardship during his presidency due to the Panic of 1837. He continued many of Jackson's policies and is remembered for his efforts to maintain the integrity of the Union during a time of rising sectional tension. Thank you for watching.